The views expressed and the opinions given by the individual host and their guests do not necessarily reflect those of ParaX, its affiliates, or its sponsors.
Step outside of your comfort zone. See the world with a whole new perspective. Join us and experience the unexplained on the Paranormal View.
And welcome everybody right here to the Paranormal View on ParaX Radio Network. I want to thank everybody for being with us tonight, and those listening here in the chat room and those listening from around the world. We appreciate each and every one of you. If you're listening from somewhere else and you'd like to come join everybody here in the chat room, feel free to come over to paraxradio.com and click on the Chat Now button, and you will be in with all these wonderful people. You'll be able to interact with them and interact with us. You can ask questions tonight of our guest by sending a private chat to either Ceiling Cat or myself, Henry Foister, and we will get those answered for you. And if you're somewhere else and you've got a question but you don't want to come to the chat room, you can do so by sending a question to the paranormalview@gmail.com and just put attention question on it, and we will get those answered for you. I got with us Barbara Duncan.
Hello, everybody.
And I've got Jeffrey Gould.
Hello, hello. I hope I'm sounding okay because you're cutting in and out a bit. For me.
No,
that sounds fine for me.
Yep.
Cool.
Sounded okay. So we have a great guest tonight, and we'll get Jeff here to introduce her in just a second. We did have a real good show last week, and if you missed it, you can always catch it. It was our 10th anniversary show, so we had a whole lot of people in the chat room and a whole lot of people on the air trying to talk. But I think it went very well. So with that, why don't you, because I've got a whole bunch of questions, and I know Barbara's got a lot too, or Kat does anyway. Why don't you introduce our guest, Jeff?
Yes, well, tonight's returning guest is Deborah Blake, the author of numerous books on modern witchcraft, as well as the Baba Yaga Series, the Rider Series, and the Veiled Magic Series of paranormal romance urban fantasies. So welcome back, Deborah Blake.
Thank you. So happy to be here.
All right. People said I was sounding kind of quiet here in the chat room. See if it's come up a little bit. I turned it up just a little bit. See if that's okay now for me.
And happy 10th anniversary.
Yeah, it went by kind of fast, I think. I don't know where it went to.
Well, you know what they say, time flies when you're having fun.
Yeah, I don't want it to go by too fast, though. All right, we're going to be talking about cat magic tonight. And we've had you on before, and we always like having you because we can ask a question and just let you talk half the night. So that's good for us.
I think I just got subtly insulted.
No. That's good for us.
Well, yeah, but tonight I'm going to make you talk.
Yeah, we're going to ask a lot of questions. That's all what we're going to do.
The cat's going to ask a lot of questions. You're not kidding me.
The cat, yes. And I've got a bunch of those for it, too. Cat magic. You talk about right to start with I guess you have cat, you use components used in spells. How is a cat used in spells?
Well, first of all, as you would discover if you read the little book of cat magic, the cat will pretty much be used any way it feels like being used and not in any other way than that. If anybody has cats, they know that. Cats play different roles. I mean, there are some cats that are specifically familiars. My cat Magic, the cat queen of the universe, who put her 2 paws worth in this book, was in fact a magical cat, and she would come out and take part in rituals and lend her energy. When I had my group would get together, Blue Moon Circle, she would, if we were inside, and we would have our altar set up in the middle of the living room, she would come into the room and walk around the circle, greet everyone, which let us know that it was time to start the ritual. And then she would either sit under the altar or on the couch behind us and supervise. And when we were done, she would come and stride out of the room so we knew everything was over. Not all cats are familiars, though, so the alternatives are to do spells for your cat, or just sort of getting, using that feline energy. Or if you're doing spells for your cat, you can use components from them, as long as they're taken in a humane way. Like if a cat loses a whisker or sheds a claw, which they do in a natural kind of way, you can use those elements to work magic for their benefit. Or if you're brushing the cat, you can save some of the fur, that kind of thing. Don't go torturing your cat to get their little bits and pieces. That's wrong, and the gods will smote you.
Certainly bast.
Yes.
Well, not to mention the cat will smote you too. So
Yeah, pretty much.
They know where you sleep.
Yeah.
And eat and pee.
Oh yeah. They know where you put your slippers.
Yes.
Exactly.
Which is speaking of that, we have 2 cats, and every so often
Only 2? That's hardly any.
Yeah, that's plenty for me. But there's many times when Patsy will go downstairs to go to put her shoes on, and there's one of their little stuffed toys inside one of her shoes, where they take it over there and put it in her shoe.
Oh, they brought her a gift. That's so sweet.
Yep, they do that.
Mine usually throw up in my shoes. I think a nice little stuffed toy would be lovely.
A lot better than murder presents. Little
Yes,
mice.
yes.
You talk about cats from other lands. Do different breeds of cats make a difference in the spell?
Not really. I think in general, cat energy is cat energy. I mean, there's a lot of intriguing history of cats from different lands, which I talk about in the book, just because it's cool. Learning about how different cultures looked at cats and how it all sort of comes down to the way we look at cats. That's one thing. But really, when it comes to doing magic, each individual cat has his or her own personality, but it doesn't have so much to do with what kind of cat they are. It has more to do with, I guess you could say, what kind of cat they think they are.
Or a tiger.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Panther, lion, tiger, giant prehistoric, something. Really depends on the cat.
And maybe even a velociraptor.
Yeah, could be.
All right, Barbara.
Play with the claws. Yeah. I'm fascinated with the difference in the cat histories, because it seems that even throughout history, cats somehow were venerated.
Almost in every culture. I mean, there were a few cultures where they got a bad rap. Once you get into sort of medieval England, things did not go well for them. But in the earlier cultures, certainly in Egypt, which we all know cats were worshipped, and rightfully so, I might say. But there are a lot of cultures in which cats were considered to be sacred. I love this quote by Terry Pratchett, which was, thousands of years ago, cats were worshipped as gods. Cats have never forgotten this. And if you have a cat, you will know that that is true. But yes, Egypt, India, Persia, Japan, and China, there were a lot of cultures in which they were considered to be either sacred or magical or both. One of my favorite tales is from Persia, where it's said that the Prophet Muhammad loved cats, and there's a famous story about how his favorite cat, Musa, fell asleep on his arm, and rather than disturb the cat, he cut the sleeve off of his robe. And so, those of us who have tried not to disturb our sleeping cats can really understand that. If I had a nickel for every time when I should have gotten up and didn't because there was a cat perfectly comfortable on my lap, and I thought, well, I'll just read one more chapter of this book before I get up and do the house cleaning because the cat's comfortable.
Yep. Well, I remember reading that in one of Ripley's Believe It or Nots about the sleeping kitten on his the long sleeve of his robe.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want to wake him up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Well,
And it's interesting because what happened in the Middle Ages in Europe, when they just decided that cats were bad and they got rid of them, didn't realize that the cats were keeping the mice and rodent population down, which was the cause of the Black Death. So, I mean, they pretty much,
Yeah, they pretty much caused the Black
kitty
Death.
karma.
Yeah, although a pretty drastic form of karma. But yeah, that's pretty much where it started going wrong. Was for some reason around that time, people started to view cats as evil, in part because they were associated with witches who were also thought to be evil. I don't understand where that comes from. We're all lovely people.
Plus, witches were the original teachers and healers and wise women of the
and herbalists.
village.
They were very often, the wise women or wise people, because some of them were men, in the village, and they were healers, and they were the people who passed down the lessons. And unfortunately, when the church moved in, that was a threat because it was all about political power. Yep. And the poor cats got dragged into that. And in the 1200s, Pope Gregory the Ninth issued what's called a papal bull, which, I mean, it sounds like it's a rude thing, but no, it just meant it was an official announcement, saying the cats were evil and in league with Satan, and people started killing them. And yes, sadly, after that, bad things happened.
Yep.
Now, we was talking about the different types of cats in different lands, and what is the differences of the cats, like in Egypt and India and Persia, Japan, China, Rome, Greece?
Well, there's different breeds of cats. For instance, one of my new cats is part probably either Maine Coon cat or Norwegian forest cat. They're cold weather cats, and you can tell because they have very long fur and double coats and big poofy tails and big fur coming out of their ears, and their paws actually have tufts of fur coming out between them. His name is Koshka, actually named after a character in one of my books who was a dragon disguised as a cat, which when I saw him, I went, yeah, if there was ever a dragon disguised as a cat, that's him. But he's got about like a 2-inch puff of fur that comes out of between his toes, and it's because it helped them walk on snow and ice. So cats evolved in different ways depending on the climate where they were, and because they're all descended from wild cats. They have different markings, they have different attitudes, but let's face it, all cats have attitudes.
Oh yeah. Well, I actually have one of the 4 cats I have is actually 2 of them are brothers, and if you don't know them well enough, it's easy not to have a trouble telling them apart. I can tell them apart. Oliver is on the bed right now. Yeah, how's it going? And he's a gigantic fluff ball with the Swiffer tail, but he's a blonde ginger cat.
Really?
As is his brother Oscar, who's more streamlined, whereas Oliver has more of a thicker mane around his face.
Koshka's got that ruff that looks like a big mane around his face. He's my little lion.
Yeah, and Oscar is more streamlined. He has more of a streamlined head, and he's a third smaller than Oliver, who's just decided that my petting him means he should get up and be petted. So now he's being all affectionate. Of course, he's psychic.
About him.
He's also psychic. He knows exactly when I want to take a nap, even if it's not at the same time. If I'm thinking, I'm really tired, I should just lie down for a bit. Zoom! Oliver comes running in, and he's like, "Okay, dibs, your arms. That's where I'm sleeping too." So he's climbing up on me.
Yeah, we have I guess it's a gray striped male cat, and it stands higher in the back than it does in the front, and its back paws will angle out, and when it walks, it kind of struts, you might say. I've never seen one walking like that.
That's interesting.
It's and I swear up and down it's Egyptian or something, but we have no idea. She got it from the shelter, and we have no idea.
Well, all my cats are rescues. So in fact, Koshka and his sister Ember, who does not in fact have the mane, she's got very soft fur, but she's actually got gray fur with bits of orange in it, hence the name Ember. And so you can tell she's a little something, but she doesn't look anything like that. And yeah, they came from this 25 cat hoarding situation. So we only have sort of a vague idea of their age. And he clearly was supposed to be a really large cat and probably will not be, because I think they were really deprived when they were young. And the third new cat, Harry Dresden, came from another rescue organization. All my guys comes either from shelters or rescue organizations. Let's face it, there are so many cats that need homes.
Was he named after the character in the Dresden Files?
Well, yes and no. He was, but on the Twitter, I am friends with. His handle is @HarriedWizard, and he is Harry Dresden on Twitter. He is not the author, Jim Butcher. He is somebody who has sort of manifested that character, and this is a point of pride for me. He has, I think, over 8,000 followers and follows 50-some people, one of whom is me. Which cool. I think is pretty much, means I'm officially cool. So the cat is, in fact, actually named after the guy on Twitter. But yes, it is named after the character Harry Dresden, the wizard, because wizards and witches have to stick together. Yeah.
Does your cats talk?
Harry does, actually. Koshka and Ember are fairly quiet. Ember occasionally makes some noise. Harry, if the food is not being processed quickly enough for him, I get meow, 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 meow. And I recently took the 3 of them to the vet for their shots and their checkups. And all the way there was protestations. The other 2 were reasonably quiet. Ember would occasionally make a little complaint. Meow, meow. But no, he was mouthy as heck.
Well, the one I was just talking about that waddles kind of. There's a ton of toys around the house on the floor, little plush toys that they
we are toy central here with the half-grown cats. Anything to keep them from torturing or breaking the rest of my house.
Well, at night sometimes he'll be downstairs, he'll be coming up the stairs, and you hear this, oh, oh, and he's carrying one of those in his mouth and hollering at the same time. Yeah. No, he's not a baby. He's probably 5 years old, maybe 6.
Yeah, but sounding like a baby.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And he's carrying one of those in his mouth. Yeah.
Oh, I had a cat that used to do that. She would carry things around, and sometimes it was toys. Sometimes it would be, like if I left my socks on the floor, she would carry a sock around and make this horrendous muted yowling noise, like, and it was clearly some sort of a mothering thing, but yeah, it was not pleasant. Yeah, that was Minerva, the mother of magic, and her brother, the giant gray cat Mystic, and yeah, she was a little odd. I mean, she'd had a rough time, and you could tell.
Now, you had one here called Cats in Europe, and what got me was you also put in parentheses, you put the good, the bad, and the ugly. So,
yeah, well, that pretty much describes all the cats everywhere. But yeah, I mean, that was the point where in theory they became associated with evil things, and black cats especially got a really bad rap, which was not good for black cats then, and is still. It's amazing to me how many people still have a bad association with black cats.
Wow.
Well,
now,
my friends,
2 of my 4 are black, so I happen to like black cats.
Yeah, we have Bart is a black cat we have, and he's got. If you look at the peak of his back, he has like these 13 individual white fur, just strands of white fur.
Oh, interesting.
But if you don't really look for them, we know they're there. So I always say, he's a mostly black cat. He's like 99.999.
Yeah, Harry Dresden is black, but he has a little sort of scattering of white hairs randomly in his fur, which a friend of mine calls constellations, which I really love. Yeah, I had never seen a cat. I've had lots of black cats in my life, and I've had some that had, that little white spot on their breast, or, Magic, the cat, Queen of the Universe. When you pushed her fur back, it was actually gray underneath. Her mother and her brother were gray, so that when she didn't shed black, she shed gray, which was fun for my black clothes. But yeah, Harry's got this neat little, when you look at him, he appears to be completely black, but when you get closer, you can see here and there just these little, like a few white hairs here and a few white hairs there, but there's no patches of white. It's, he does seem to be, and he's got that sort of sleek panther look.
Barbara?
Yeah. Well, Bart's like 16 pounds, so we joke that he's a big fat jaguar.
Yeah, Mystic was huge. He was 18 at his highest and 17 for most of his life, and he was just gigantic. His shoulders were a good 2 inches over, above his mother and his sister, who were normal-sized cats. And I live in an old farmhouse, and when he came down the stairs, the whole house would shake. Wow. Mind you, that's partially just the house.
Now, it's interesting. I don't know if you're aware, but in America, the bad PR is that black cats are the evil cats or unlucky cats, and in England, white cats are considered unlucky.
I'd heard that, and it's sort of funny because you have to wonder. The black thing, you can sort of figure out where that came from. The black is evil or dark or bad. White cats, I don't know why anybody would think that, although a lot of pure white cats are deaf. So maybe people just thought they were spooky.
Well, the first cat I rescued was an all-white cat, and although he had selective hearing as to when to, he could hear very well, and I knew that he could because he actually responded to his name. His original name was Breezy, and I thought, well, that's not going to work. So I named him Bast, not realizing that Bast is a goddess, not a god. But neither he nor Bast, the goddess, cared, apparently, because he took right to it. And, if I called him from a distance, he would come running.
Yeah, I had two black cats whose names were Lares and Penetes. They were named after the Greek gods that were demigods that were guardians of the household. They were sort of household spirits. And when we adopted them, they were barn cats. We were told they were boys, so we gave them boy names. And then they had babies. And it turned out that, in fact, they were not boys. But those were their names, and they were still guardians of the household, and were happy to, guard us from, mice and all sorts of other critters. And they didn't seem to care that they had theoretically the wrong names either. So, I guess they just make them their own.
Yeah. Well, it's like we had back when I lived back east, we had neighbors who had just gotten a dog that they were calling King, and it didn't take me more than 2 seconds to realize, this is a girl dog, right? And you're like, oh, no, this is a boy dog. And eventually she had a litter. They couldn't tell
the difference on a dog?
I had no idea what was wrong with them. I'm like, no, seriously.
It would be pretty hard to tell.
Yeah.
Dogs, usually it's fairly obvious.
Exactly.
They have outies.
Yep. And but eventually she had puppies because our dog was spayed, she wasn't, and my dog's boyfriend wasn't neutered. And by that time they said, well, we'll call her Queenie. I'm like, well, now it's too late. She knows her name is King. Exactly. So my brother and I just spelled it Qing.
That's quite clever.
Wow. Barbara, I know you got a bunch of questions.
Now, I find it fascinating that the story is that cats rarely talk to each other, but they do talk a lot to humans.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, they'll meow and hiss at each other.
Right.
But when it comes to talk, now when I get home every evening, we have a ritual. Moo has to meow a lot. She runs into the bedroom, onto the bed, so that I will come up and rub her tummy.
Of course.
And she'll meow the entire time.
Really?
Yeah. It's like, well, this is what happened today, and you weren't around. And
that's right. I'm going to update you. Here's the news of the day. Well, my theory is that cats don't really need to talk to each other because they're all telepathic, which is how they know when you're thinking about putting them in the carrier to go to the vet. It doesn't matter if the carrier has been sitting out there for 3 days. They somehow know when you're thinking about using it. The only reason they talk to you is they think you're, stupid because you're not telepathic, and therefore they actually have to tell you stuff.
And I find that very true in that, I can walk in the door with the flea, drops in.
Oh, yeah. Forget it. You'll never see them.
She just, whoops. For some reason.
That's why I wait till they're asleep.
That's how the nail clipping happens here. I mostly wait till they're asleep, and then I get 2 or 3 clipped, and then they figure out that what I'm doing, they wake up, they take off, and then I do the next couple the next time. Although I will say the new guys, who my old bunch of cats, I called them the Furball Gang. And, Angus is the only one left of the Furball Gang. The new ones are called the Wild Bunch because they really are. But they're pretty cooperative about things like getting their nails clipped, and Koshka, the long-haired one, thankfully really loves to get brushed, which makes my life a lot easier. And he'll actually not only let me brush him, but then he'll roll over and give me his belly to brush.
Oh, wow.
I had a kitty named Sato who would love to have his nails clipped. You know, he would sit in my lap and he'd hold his paw up.
Really?
When I was finished with one paw, he'd put it down and he'd pick up his other paw.
Wow.
He just was just the sweetest little thing in the world.
He just liked his manicure.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he just loved manicures. Yeah.
And I was
For some
fortunate
reason,
enough.
yeah.
And I was fortunate, yeah.
Moo loves having her butt rubbed,
Really?
which I always, yeah, the back of the skirt, the back of her
That's
legs.
unusual.
Yeah.
I know. And it's just like, are you a cat or a dog? What's going
Well,
on
you know,
here?
Harry Dresden does this funny thing. If I go into the bedroom and he's lying on the bed, he will, give me that cute sort of cockhead look and then roll over on his back and show me his belly, just like a dog, and do that sort of rolling back and forth, look how cute I am, look how cute I am. And he wants me to go over and rub his belly, and he will purr and purr and purr. And many male cats, you try that, you will lose a hand.
Yep.
A lot of male cats don't like their belly rubbed, but he just thinks it's the best thing ever.
I trained each of the 4 cats I have, I raised from kittens. They came in very sickly, and I was charged with, taking care with them, and they just stuck around. And I raised them from Puka and Sprite first from kittens, and a year later, Oscar and Oliver showed up. And so I've trained them what behaviors to be cool with, including but not limited to essentially being completely tactile. Oliver, how you doing? They're all belly rub cats. The gingers don't like their nails trimmed. If I can do it, I will. They also do not like the flea stuff. They will flee. Puka and Sprite, you can sneak up on them with the flea stuff, but both Puka and Sprite will let me trim their nails without a problem. They're just like, all right, let's get it over with.
Yeah, these guys are mostly pretty good. Thankfully, I do not have to deal with the flea stuff because my guys don't go outside. So, we are pretty much safe from that unless somebody picks up something from somewhere, like if we go to the vet or something, or if a mouse comes in and brings a stray flea. But in general, we don't have to deal with that, for which I'm extremely grateful.
Well, theoretically, these guys are not outdoor cats, but they get out. They'll ninja past you. And, sometimes it's trickier to catch the orange kids because they're just sort of like, okay, hide, and they're like, now we can play. And they'll just, come in when they're ready. But when they are ready, and if I'm coming out like, all right, where are they? Whichever one's out, they'll just roll over. And they're like, okay, I'm ready to go in. And that's their signal, like, okay, boom, and they'll fall down and completely filthize themselves. Like, how dirty can I get? I'm like,
yeah. I used to have cats that went outside, and it was quite the adventure. When I moved to the house I'm at now, which is in the country, I've got coyotes in the hills and foxes and a country road that people drive at insane speeds down. And I just said, well, we're going to try doing the indoor cat thing. And it's, I've been here 17 years, and I'm on my second batch of indoor cats. And they all seem fine, although, Harry Dresden is very fast, and he does make a run for it. But I'm very fortunate. I have a mudroom, which I call the airlock, which, there's the door from the kitchen into the mudroom, and then from the mudroom outside. And so even if a cat makes it into the mudroom, as long as that outdoor door is closed, which it is supposed to be, they can't get any further. So that's pretty much been my saving grace.
And you're the second person, I've heard talk about a cat airlock.
Yeah, it's a wonderful
and
thing.
That's what we used to call our mudroom back east.
Yep. Well, and it's the back door because I live in the country and everybody goes in and out of the back door. If people come to my front door, which does not have an airlock, I just sort of point them around the house because I'm not opening that door. It's too dangerous.
Okay, I want to remind everybody, if you do have questions, you can private chat them to myself or Ceiling Cat, and we will get those answered for you. Lots of good stuff going on. Great book. And let's see, Barbara, I know you still got a bunch. Why don't you do one more before we go take a break? How does that sound? Or did I lose you?
Did she fall off?
No, I'm here.
Oh, she's
Yeah.
She's thinking very hard.
Does that?
Well,
I can tell from here.
you got this cat, and she likes to bite ankles, and so I have to swat around. And
Puka's a bare. God help you if you have bare feet, because he'll like toes, but he just he doesn't bite them. He just rolls on them. Doesn't make sense.
Yeah, this is kind of fun to have to work around kitty cats, but they do that. And it's odd because I have candles set up at home, and you're talking in your book about things that you can and can't do around kitty cats, and one of them is usually fire and candles. She never really bothers them very much.
Well, it depends on the cat, and it depends. I have a number of altars, but the main one that I burn candles on is high enough up so that the candles are out of reach. Now, mind you, when my group does ritual, it's on a low table, and we have candles lit, and nobody ever bothered them. So, to some extent, it really depends on the cat. Before we would start ritual, Magic would jump up on the table because she had a thing about sage, and if you had the sage wand out there, she would, get up and grab it and pull it to pieces. She really loved sage. But once we were in the middle of ritual and actually doing ritual, she never would jump up on the altar. But if you don't know what your cat does, if you're not sure, if you haven't done ritual around your cat before, you definitely want to be careful about fire. You also want to be careful about things like essential oils, some of which can be poisonous to cats or not very good for them. I actually had a cat many years ago when I was in an apartment who, I had one of those oil diffusers that, you put water in a couple of drops of essential oil and put a little candle underneath. And the first thing that he did was sat there one day with his tail right over the candle. And I didn't realize it until I started smelling burning fur. And there he was with his tail perched over the candle. He obviously didn't know anything was going on. And, so I realized that was not a good idea. He was okay. He didn't burn himself. He just singed a few hairs. But there was a time when I put a few drops of peppermint essential oil into this diffuser. Turns out that peppermint is related to catnip. They're both in the mint family. And this poor cat, was attracted to this water and essential oil mix and, took a couple of sips out of it and then foamed at the mouth for about a half an hour. Wow. Luckily, he was okay. I, of course, was completely panicked. He was completely panicked and running around the house, as I'm trying to catch him and rinse his mouth out with water. But you do want to be careful about the witchy tools that you use, because certainly there are some herbs that are dangerous to cats, or even things like peppermint, which, in theory will not hurt the cat. Essential oils are very strong, and you don't really want them getting into them. And there's things that they're attracted to. I mean, thankfully, Magic with the sage, she just made a mess. It didn't hurt her. She didn't eat it. She just, sort of shredded it. But there are lots of herbs that we use in witchcraft that are, in fact, not safe for cats. And so if you are not sure that your cat will stay away from those kind of things, you will want to be careful. And, of course, if you have anything that's sharp, some people's athames are, in fact, sharp, and some are not. You just want to be careful.
All right. I I think what we're going to do is go ahead and take us a quick break. And when we come back, we got plenty more to talk about. So, Jeff, why don't you take us out for a quick break?
Yeah, well, you're listening to the Paranormal View on para-x.com with your hosts Henry Foister, Seal and Cat Barbara Duncan, and myself, Jeffrey Gould, and tonight's returning guest author, Deborah Blake. So stay tuned for more of the Paranormal View after the break.
Whether you're listening at home, at work, or anywhere, thanks for making Para-X part of your day. Your source for everything paranormal, Para-X.
And welcome back, everybody, right here to the Paranormal View on the Parax Radio Network. I want to thank everybody for being with us tonight, those here in the chat room and those listening from around the world. We appreciate each and every one of you. So, we have with us Barbara Duncan.
I'm still here.
And Jeffrey Gould.
Hello.
And our great guest, Deborah Blake.
Meow.
And we're talking about cat magic.
I almost thought we were going to find out from where we had listeners. The way that sounds.
Well, we are, if Barbara has it.
I do.
Oh.
We got listeners from all over the United States, Canada, the United Kingdom, and our friends in the Netherlands.
Oh, all right. Welcome.
Wow.
I'm glad everybody's listening tonight then. So, it's a section in there I thought was pretty interesting. And I figured we can talk a whole lot about this. It's fascinating facts about cats. And the first one you had is a group of cats is called a clouder.
A clouder, yep.
Which,
Yeah, I love doing the research for this book because I just found the most fun things. I actually did not know that clouder fact. I always called a group of cats a pain in my butt. But, that's a whole different technical term. But, yeah, did you know
See,
that...
I always thought it was a street gang.
a street gang.
Yeah. Well, unless they're in the kitchen, and then they're a kitchen gang. But, yeah, did you know that cats sleep for 70% of their lives?
I could probably guess that as much as mine sleeps.
Yeah, well, and considering that my younger ones now, are up and around a fair amount, I think as they get older, it becomes more and more. But yeah, it's pretty amazing. Things like they have over 20 muscles that control their ears.
Yes.
I don't know about you, but I can't move my ears at all.
And the things that they can hear.
Oh yeah, it's that's the strongest of their senses, and they can hear sounds as high as 64 kilohertz compared to us measly humans who can only hear 20 kilohertz, which probably explains why they can hear the can opener no matter where they are.
Yes, we have little pop-top cans, and they're right
there.
there.
Oh yeah, and then they're or the treat can. I have, one of those jugs of treats, and as soon as I take it off the counter, I don't even have to knock it up and down or anything. I just take it off the counter, and no matter where in the house they are, boom, they're there.
Yes, they are. You also said that cats can't taste sweetness.
I know, isn't that sad? And God only knows how the scientists figured that out.
Yeah.
Did they take a poll? It's I don't know, but that's what they say. Although there are cats with sweet tooths. My cat Magic, who is talked about a lot in this book, as with many of my previous books, she there were notes from Magic the cat, which made this pretty bittersweet when it came out and she was gone. But she actually liked berries. And I would have blueberries or raspberries or something like that in my cereal bowl. and she'd sit on my lap, and that little black paw would dart out, grab a berry, not the milk, but a berry, and she would eat them. So she clearly tasted something in them. Might not have been sugar, but
Right.
it was something.
I wonder if they can actually taste the stuff, but not whether it's sweet
Right,
or not.
it apparently just isn't sweet to them.
Right.
Although, again, I don't know how the scientists know that. I mean, presumably it has something to do with testing what appealed to them and didn't appeal to them. Maybe they just don't like sweet.
Yeah. Well,
or maybe they can test the sensors on their tongues. I don't know.
which comes to the
I
next.
don't want to be the one wiring up a cat's tongue to see what it can taste.
Yeah, I don't think that would go well. Well, and one of my favorite cat facts: cats make more than 100 different sounds. Dogs make around 10. Thus proving the cat's superiority.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
They can talk a lot easier, I guess.
Well, they managed to figure out that whereas humans domesticated dogs, cats saw the logic in working with humans because humans had food, and the food attracted rodents and such. Cats figured, well, this is where the rodents are. So they started hanging out. They literally chose voluntarily to domesticate themselves.
And they can unchoose you at any time, and they will let you know that. Okay, here's another one of my cool facts that I really loved. The frequency of a domestic cat's purr is the exact same one at which muscles and bones repair themselves. How cool is that?
I wonder if a cat laying on your lap is purring, if it would help the bones and stuff like that heal in your body.
I'm pretty sure owning a cat can lessen the risk of stroke and heart attack by 1/3, so they're clearly doing something.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
They also have detected cancer in their owners. I have a friend. This happened with her husband. They had one of their cats would for about I forget if it was 6 months or a year, kept licking the same spot at the base of his neck, and they could not figure why this cat would not leave that spot alone. Turned out he had a brain tumor on his brainstem, exactly where the cat had been licking.
Really? Wow.
Cancer's delicious.
So, if they had listened to the cat earlier, he would have saved himself a lot of trouble. It's a pretty major brain surgery. But yeah, it's a fascinating thing. So, now I just worry whenever my cats lick me. I'm like, oh my God, are they trying to tell me something?
Well, cats...
Well, normally when cats lick me, or when Moo licks me, I think she's tasting whether or not she wants to bite down.
Cats can taste the air also.
Oh yeah. When sometimes they are sort of breathing through their mouths, and they're actually it looks like they're making a face, but they are actually sensing things in the air with an extra organ that they have that we don't have, which
called the
can
Jacobson's
air
organ.
sometimes. For poor Barbara with the smoke in the air, that's probably a good thing.
Yeah, that's the Jacobson organ.
And
Well, aren't you smart?
I work with animals.
And cats' night sight is 7 times better than humans.
They are superior in every way. They can also jump up to 6 times their own length. I don't know about you. I cannot do that.
My first cat was a klutz and a half, whereas the second cat I had, who was like twice his size, she could levitate like a bubble, and he could, I'm sure if he came across a pile of bricks, he could probably knock him over. It was hilarious because he could jump kind of like 3 feet maybe pretty well, but anything more than that, and he just became a mess. It was pretty hilarious. But he also insisted, he bonded to me so much because he had come from a household of 16 or 22 cats. and the owner had died, and no one shelter could take all of them, so they split them into like 3 clusters, and our shelter got a section. And I went in because we started having a house mouse problem, and so I was tasked to find a proper cat. And I saw this white cat. I thought, oh, you're kind of cute. And I opened the cage, and this cat literally just hugged me in a, please, for God's sake, help me, help me, help me. And I'm like, I guess it's you then. All right, well, that was quick. And what was funny was he wasn't a proper mouser. He would kill mice, but you had to give them to him. And he knew that the mice were in the pantry, but he would just sit there like, I got nothing. I don't know what to do. And it was clear he wasn't top cat on the totem pole where he had come from. So being the main cat, he just thought he was had suddenly inherited $1 million kitty dollars or whatever. So he would sleep in my arms every night.
Aww.
And he insisted I sleep on my right side with my arm a certain way so he could sleep paws up against my chest. And every so often, what I would do is I would play Letting Bass Sleep Through Bedtime, and he'd be asleep in the TV room on the first floor, and I'd go upstairs and go to bed, and at about 1 or 2 o'clock, he would wake up like, oh my goodness, I slept through bedtime. And he would come running up, and he would physically wake me up to come under the covers, turn around, roll, and sleep in my arms.
Well, they are the boss of us.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Some of them more than others, but Magic, was pretty much my supervisor. She would, when I was writing, she would sit either, if I was at the desktop, she would sit next to the keyboard with her head resting on the edge of the keyboard, which occasionally led to some very unfortunate things. And if I was sitting on the couch, which I often do, I have one of those recliner couches so I can have my legs out in front of me with a laptop, and she would sit up on the couch behind me, but always supervising me. Apparently she did not trust me to write by myself.
Yeah,
well, it's like cats can't, have to supervise us going to the bathroom, too.
Oh, yeah. But if I take a shower, I come outside and Koshka and his sister Ember are sitting outside it's like they think I'm going to vanish. I don't know, but yeah, they are always right outside the door. They're not scratching on the door. They're just sitting and waiting as if to say, really, did you, leave any water for anybody else?
Now,
well, that was another thing I trained, at least Puka and Sprite, was when I was staying in the house next door, they had a glass booth shower. And as kittens, I would bring them into the shower with me and wash them when I took a shower so that they would get used to wet, because I knew eventually something's going to happen and they're going to be messed up and I'm going to need to bathe them.
Right.
And so they were like, oh, all right, fine. But they never fought. If I brought them in there, they'd be like, oh, it's this, fine, whatever. But they would never fight, and I've never been clawed or had a problem with it.
Now, female cats use their right paw, and male cats use their left paw.
Okay.
It's kind of cool. I mean, there's all sorts of really neat things. I mean, they're sort of, the female cats are right pawed, like people are right-handed or left-handed, and male cats apparently are left pawed. Unless you're trying to steal their food, in which case they are both pawed. And you're in big trouble.
Wow. Barbara, I think we're leaving you out, kind of.
No.
Oh. Well.
I'm listening. But I want to move on because, again, this is one of Kitty's questions, which is cat naming.
Cat what?
Cat naming.
Oh, name.
Cat naming.
Because, she unfortunately is a cow cat, which is the white and black splotched cats.
I have a friend who has
a
black and white cat who looks almost like a Palomino horse.
Yeah.
And that cat is in fact named Cow Cat. And it's, capital C, all one word, cow, cat,
Cat.
and gigantic cat, really, really gorgeous. Yeah, the interesting thing about cats is they often will tell you their name. If you wait, if you're patient, it sort of will come to you. When I was trying to name Magic and Mystic, I mean, I had this trend of sort of witchy kind of names. I had, cats, like Laris and Penates, who were named after, household gods. And, I named their mother Minerva. That sort of came to me right away. But I really wasn't sure about the kittens, and they were kittens when I got them. And, I make gemstone jewelry, so I was thinking onyx and agate. And then it just sort of came to me that no, their names were Magic and Mystic. It wasn't something that I made up. That was somebody whispered in my ear, pretty much. So, and then there was Samhain, who was a black and orange cat, and of course Samhain is the holiday that they got Halloween from. So, black and orange cat with a little white. Her name was pretty darn clear. But you have to be very careful what you name cats. When I was a student, many thousands of years ago, I got this very adorable, cute little kitten. I mean, she was so cute, it just about killed you to look at her. And I couldn't think of anything other than cutesy names. So I said, all right, I'm going to be contrary and name her Killer. Turned out that she had the sharpest claws in the planet. And I would come home from school, and she would come racing across the apartment and climb up me, because she was very lonely. She was an only cat, and she really was a killer. So I'm just saying, be very careful what you name your cats. On the other hand, Magic is the one and only true familiar I have ever had, with my many billions of cats and being a witch for however 20, 25 years, however long it's been. And so clearly Magic was the right name for her, and she was a very magical cat in a lot of ways. One of the things that I have in the book is a spell for discovering your cat's name. If you haven't figured it out on your own, you can do a spell that's pretty simple. Take a white candle, a bit of the cat's fur. You can either, brush them, or, when they're sleeping, you can snip a tiny little bit, not where it'll be missed or make them look funny and be laughed at by the other cats. And you can either have a list of possible names you've written out by hand, or a book of names. For instance, there's the Llewellyn Complete Book of Names for pagans, witches, Wiccans, druids, heathens, mages, shamans, and independent thinkers of all sorts. Go ahead, say that 5 times fast. So you would light the candle, place the fur on the book or the list, and say the spell, which is very simple. If the cat will hang around with you while you say the spell, that's really great, but it doesn't matter. It's fine to say it if the cat's not there. That's what the fur is there for. And the spell is, a cat needs a name like a witch needs a cat, perfect and fitting and right. A name for the daylight without a disguise, a name for the shadows of night. Help me to see this cat's proper name, the one that will fit like a glove. Let it ring in my ears and appear in my head to suit this new cat that I love.
All right. And it'll come to you?
That's the hope. And sometimes you have to sleep on it. Sometimes it takes a couple of days. It doesn't necessarily happen as soon as you do the spell, although it might just pop into your head. Ding. And of course, in the book, I have, a list of suggested possible witchy cat names, both for male and female cats. A few examples of cats with interesting names that belong to famous people. Mark Twain had cats named, I'm not making this up, Beelzebub, Blatherskite, Buffalo Bill, Apollinaris, Sin, Sour Mash, Tammany, and Zoroaster.
Not all at once, I would guess.
Oh, maybe. I don't know. And of course, there was T.S. Eliot, who wrote Old Possum's Book of Practical Cats, and he had all sorts of oddly named cats.
Wow, I can't go getting too tongue-tied.
Yeah.
Which is why my cat is named Moo.
Yeah, Moo.
Well, that is basic. I mean, that's pretty good. Yeah. Well, Jimmy Carter, the president, had a cat named Misty Malarkey Yin Yang Number 1, which I just love.
Jeez.
He clearly had a whimsical side. Ernest Hemingway had 8 cats at the same time, named Alley Cat, Crazy Christian, Ecstasy, F. Puss, Fats, Friendless Brother, Dillinger, and Pilar.
I'm guessing F was.
Writers are very odd.
I'm guessing the F was just more euphemistic than what he would actually say.
I don't know. I don't know.
Now, normally, up till the recent cats that I currently have, I tended to name my cats after deity. I had Bast, I had Isis, Marigan, Freya, and then when I got Puka as Sprites, they were the first true kittens I'd ever had. I had always adopted them from shelters, and these guys were brought, we found these kittens, and they gave them to my friends, and they said, okay, you're in charge of taking care of these guys.
Of course you were.
And eventually, and I'm thinking, what, who, and I could not get a deity name in my head to fit them. So I just figured, I should have gone more alliterative, but I went with Puka for the male and Sprite for the female. I should have really called her Pixie, but because Puka and Pixie.
Well, but apparently Pixie was not her name.
Apparently not. So, but Puka knows his name. Oliver, I'm pretty sure, knows his name, and Oscar, I'm relatively certain he kind of knows his name. So, and for some reason, I don't know why I went with Oscar and Oliver with them, but the fact that as kittens they really looked identical. I mean, you had to stare at their faces to tell that one of the ginger eyes had a little white rim around it, almost like those orange ice creams you used to eat on a stick. And so I was saying, okay, you're definitely Oscar, you're definitely Oliver. And when I would carry them around, I would simply repeat their names back and forth, both Oscar and Oliver, Oscar, over and over and over, so that they would hear that whenever I was carrying them around. So I think that's why it drilled into their little heads.
Wow. We was talking about, I don't know if we was talking about it or not, but the some of the cats.
Yes, we're about to.
Yeah, we are. Bast was an Egyptian goddess.
Right.
Freya was a Norse goddess.
Yes. And the Marigan was the Celtic goddess. In fact, the Marigan is often mistaken for family banshees because she would do if someone who was about to go to war was in the woods and would see a woman washing a bloodstained shirt in the river or the stream, they realized, oh, she's washing my bloody shirt. That means that man probably would fall in battle because she was also a war deity.
Yeah, there are a few deities who are particularly associated with cats. Not a lot. I was actually sort of surprised. I mean, Bast is obviously the best known, and many of us witchy types have statues of Bast in one form or another on our altars or around our house, either in the form of a woman with a cat's head, or of a black cat. with usually like sort of Egyptian gold jewelry on, and of course, we all know that she's the guardian of cats, but she's also she's also associated with motherhood and fertility, which makes sense with the cats, and love and sex and music, which also sort of makes sense when you think about cats.
Yeah, because they put on these little community theater plays all the time.
Well, they have music that they make. You may or may not think it's all that musical to your ears.
Yeah. When it's not winter, yeah.
Yeah, but she's a good protective goddess for new cats, new kittens, or even a new baby. She was very much a mother cat. Now, the Egyptian deities also included Mut and Hathor, Mut, M-U-T, not two T's, Hathor and Sekhmet, who some saw as a lioness form of Bastet, who are more associated with wild cats and, lionesses, that sort of thing. So if you have a particularly wild cat, you might want to, call on one of them instead of Bast, or in addition, of course, to Bast. But yeah, there are a few goddesses, and I talk about them in the book. Sekhmet is more fierce. She was
more the ruler of the underworld, right?
Right. Well, she was called the lion-headed, or the terrible one, or the powerful one. She was the goddess of war and, ironically, healing. Although that could be convenient if you're in war a lot. But she was supposed to be the daughter of Ra, the sun god, so she was also a solar goddess. And she's somebody that's good to call on if you need a fierce defender or an ally. Say you decided to do protection work for your cat or for your home, it would be good to call on her because she's the fierce one.
And Ra sometime appeared as a huge cat.
Oh, yes. Yes. So, and Freya, while she didn't appear as a cat, she was very fond of cats. She was Norse and was sometimes called the mistress of cats. And farmers who wanted to get on her good side would put out milk for stray cats. I'm pretty sure the cats were the ones that started that rumor. Yeah, and she actually was said to have ridden in a chariot that was pulled by two massive cats, which I sort of love that image of two gigantic cats pulling a chariot. If I could figure out how to do that, I would.
Well, my Freya, we decided that she was in disguise because if you really examined her markings, she looked like a plain tabby cat with a white bottom, but if you really looked at it, it was like she was a white cat disguising herself as a tabby with a tabby cloak and a mask. Because if you looked at her face, the top had the tabby face with white eyeliner, as it were, as though a tabby mask had been put over the white face, and then it was a tabby back going down the sides like a cape and the tabby tail, but everything from like the midsection down was white as snow.
Oh, that's so cool. One of the things that I had fun researching when I wrote this book was, myths and folklore and tales. And there's a Chinese cat creation myth, which I really loved because it seems very appropriate. The Chinese say that when the world began, the gods appointed cats to make sure things were running smoothly and gave them the gift of speech to help them communicate clearly. But cats were more interested in sleeping under cherry trees and chasing the falling blossoms. They couldn't be bothered to be in charge of the world and suggested to the gods that perhaps humans might be better at the job. The gods were disappointed but agreed to take the power of speech away from cats and give it to humans instead. Alas, humans turned out to be not very good at the job either. We were allowed to keep the power of speech, but cats were put back in charge, where they remain to this day. That's my favorite myth.
I think we're going to go ahead and take our last break, and when we come back, we can talk about some more of the spells that you have in the book. So, Jeff, you want to take us out?
Yeah, we're still listening to the Paranormal View on power-x.com with your hosts Henry Foister, Ceiling Cat, Barbara Duncan, and myself, Jeffrey Gould, with tonight's wonderful returning guest author, Deborah Blake. So stay tuned for more of the Paranormal View and Kitty Talk after the break.
Para-X Radio, programming for the open mind.
And welcome back, everybody, right here to the Paranormal View on the Para-X Radio Network. I want to thank everybody for taking the time to be with us tonight, those listening here in the chat room and those listening from around the world. We appreciate you. So we have back with us Barbara Duncan.
Yep, I'm here.
And we have Jeffrey Gould.
Hello, hello.
And we have our great guest, Deborah Blake.
Present.
All right. Great book. If you like cats, it's a great book to get. A lot of interesting stuff in there. Talks about all the different types of cats and different things going on with them. And then she also talks about spells and magic that you do with cats. Let's see. What do you do if you have two cats, and I mean they'll get along sometimes, but then if our male, like the little female cat can be in my lap, and if the male wants to jump up there too, she'll start hissing and wanting to fight. How do you get them to get along?
Begging, groveling, and treats. Oh, you mean magically? Well, yes. I mean, there are lots of practical things that you can do, and I always advise people to start with the practical things. I mean, I'm a very practical witch, and you don't necessarily start with magic. Magic is like DEFCON 3. But if you've tried the regular things and nothing is working, then there is a spell in the book for a tranquil household. I've had this issue myself with cats that did not get along. My cat Mystic would occasionally beat up on the female cats. He got along fine with other boy cats. For some reason, he was kind of a bully with the girl cats. So there's a pretty simple spell for trying to smooth things over in the house and get everybody to get along better. It's a good one to do during the dark moon, but you can do it whenever you need. If you can get the cat or cats in question to sit with you, that's always great. If not, it's not a problem. And let's face it, if the cat was cooperative, you probably wouldn't need the spell. But you can use either a white or a light blue candle, a bit of the problem cat's fur or something to symbolize the cat, like their food dish or a collar or even just a picture. If say you have two cats that are not getting along with each other, you can take a picture of each one and put that in front of you when you're doing the spell to help focus you. Some kind of a calming stone if you have one, like rose quartz or lapis. You can burn a little bit of lavender incense or put a little lavender essential oil on a candle, because, again, lavender is calming. And fill a dark bowl with water. You put the candle behind the bowl of water so that its light is going to fall on the surface, and you light it and the incense if you're using it. And keep in mind that all of this extra stuff is basically used to help you focus, to sort of get your intent out there. You don't have to use it. You're perfectly welcome to do the spell without any extras, or to just use the pictures of the cats or clippings of their fur or whatever. But whatever you're going to be using, sprinkle a little bit of the water from the bowl on the cat's fur or whatever you're using to represent the cat, and say the spell. Calm as the water, soft as the air, bring peace to this household and all those who share. Strong like the earth, bright like the fire, send calm and tranquility as I desire. Smooth ruffled fur, mend bad behavior, let tranquility reign for all here to savor. And then you just sort of sit in front of the candle and visualize everybody getting along well. And it's something, if it doesn't work right away, you can, do it every night for a little while or do it periodically. And hopefully it'll help.
All right. I have a question from the chat room. It's from Nyla. And she wanted to know, how do you use your cats in your magic? Or do you think their presence enhances your work?
Well, I definitely think their presence in general enhances things. It really depends on whether you have a cat that is specifically magical or not. Like I was talking about with my cat Magic, she really did come and sit during ritual, and I believe she added power to the rituals. Her mother Minerva, while she didn't come to the formal rituals, if I was saying a spell by myself, she would come and she would sit at my feet and yowl, which either was her, going along with the spell or adding her own 2 cents. It's sort of hard to say. The cats that I have now, I mean, the young ones are still pretty young. They're a little over a year old, and nobody so far has shown any inclination towards magic in particular. But I still think that their presence I think cats are inherently mystical. Some of them are more magical than others, but I think it helps to have them around. If they're willing to come and sit with you when you do magic, I think they definitely can lend that extra power. If they're not, it certainly, it doesn't hurt anything to have them in the house.
Barbara?
She's
Sorry?
meditating.
No, just listening.
Oh, don't listen to me. That's crazy talk.
All right.
Well, with my cats, and of course, my first metaphysics teacher pointed out that one thing that can walk in and out of a magic circle is a cat without consequence to the magic involved and the focus involved. Cats are like, I go, all right, well, please, what are you going to do? And but I can't. None of my cats have been really into magic per se. I mean, they're fine. I mean, they're fine with it, but they're not really into if I do candle magic or anything like that. They're just like
Yeah, Magic. My cat Magic was the first cat in all the years that I've been practicing who had any interest and who was clearly a familiar. And one of the things that I'd like to say, because it's important, is that you cannot force a cat to be a familiar if they are not. And you should never go out and get a cat. I mean, if you're looking for a familiar and you go out and find a cat that you like, that's wonderful. But if that cat doesn't turn out to be a familiar, you can't just then dump that cat and go out and look for a different one. Any cat, right? Any cat that you bring into your house, whether they turn out to be magical or not, or whether or not they turn out to be a familiar, you've taken that on. You've made a commitment, and I think that if you put it out into the universe that you would like a familiar, and and there's one out there for you, and there isn't always, then they will show up if they're meant to be there. You can't. Well, anybody who has cats knows you can't make them do anything, but you certainly cannot make them be interested in magic or want to be a familiar. And if that's the the way it is, you need to just accept that and get on with doing your magic and just be happy that their energy is there. I think when you start talking about cat magic, we all would like to have a familiar, and not all familiars are cats. I know people who have dog familiars, snake familiars, all sorts of things. All you can do is just hope that one will show up. I mean, I got 3 new cats, hoping that one of them would in fact take magic's magical place in the household, and as far as I can tell, none of them has any interest in it at all. Although one has taken over her role at helping with the energy healing that I do, which is kind of neat. And they may grow into it. They may not. I will not love them one iota less if they aren't magical cats. If they're just wonderful cats.
Well, that makes me wonder whether or not the stereotypical cat lady who has 47 cats, like, oh, not this one, got to try again.
That might be. That might very well be. It's like the guy who keeps having children, hoping he's going to get a boy, and ends up with 10 girls.
Wow.
Said the woman whose father
that Burt Reynolds movie
girls.
where at the end it's got like a yeah.
Now,
and the other thing that this in this same line, in the book I talk a lot about using a little bit of cat fur or their nails or whiskers or whatever. You should never ever cut a cat's whiskers. They do occasionally lose one, on their own. You can use, like, if you're clipping your cat's nails, which we were talking about earlier, you can use the clipping of the nails, or they shed the sheath.
If you can catch them. If they don't go flying across the room.
Right. Yeah, which they often do. But never do anything cruel to your cat to get the supplies for ritual, because you can always just take a picture. If they are not willingly giving up bits of pieces of themselves, there are other ways to do it. And you can clip the tiniest little bit of their fur if they will sit still for that and it's safe. But I don't want people out there scalping their cats so that they can do magical work. I would frown on that.
Obviously, shed fur is different than fur right from the
unless
you like stroking them.
Unless, if you brush your cat, you can use the fur that comes out of the brush, and then you've brushed your cats, which most of them will actually like. There are lots of ways to get little bits and pieces of cat to use with your rituals. I mean, and there are some things like I have, a protection spell for cats, healing spells, things like that. And you can also, use their little bits and pieces for that, but just make sure you're doing it kindly. I've also got a few fun crafty kind of things that you can do. Like, you can make a cat protection charm that you could put on their collar if they wear a collar. That sort of thing. I even have recipes.
wow.
For the cats, not for you. I mean, this is not cats.
Not how to cook your cat, I hope.
No. That would be, well,
Gross.
bad.
A little gamey.
Yeah, I'm just going to say, you'd have to plump them up for a while, I think. But no, I've got a recipe for 4 different kinds of treats. There's fish straws and catnip and cheese balls and beef snack bites. You don't have to use the whole cow. And grain-free dehydrated treats. There's some fun things. I had a lot of fun with the book, and so I did some craft things, and I did, a couple of little recipes, and some sort of fun things along with the more serious spells. I also talked about power animals, because we many of the people who are involved with witchcraft, like the idea of power animals. And of course, there are many of those that are cat related. The bobcat, cheetah, leopard, lion, lynx, mountain lion, which is a really traditional one, panther, tiger, and of course you can have a domestic cat as your power animal if you want to. And so there's spells for, discovering what your power animal is and for connecting with it, the attributes of that power animal. And
is that the same as a spirit animal?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, people use different terms. We used to call them totem animals, but that's cultural appropriation. We don't do that. So power animals are a spirit animal.
Did you ever read Ted Andrews?
I don't think so.
He was a very prolific writer, sadly no longer with us. He wrote a book called Animal Speak about power animals and spirit animals. Almost any aspect of the craft and metaphysics, he's pretty much written on it, and it's tough to know about him nowadays because A, he's passed, and B, you don't have brick and mortar bookstores anymore to go to the New Age section and see like dozens of books by Ted Andrews. Like, whoa, this guy's written a lot. But Barnes
and Noble is pretty much the only place, and their sections are smaller. I was in one, I guess back at the beginning of October. I was passing through a town that had one because mine does not. And there were a few of my books there, which always sort of tickles me. That's a happy thing. But yeah, it is trickier to find, the magical books. I mean, luckily I'm with Llewellyn, and they do a really good job of promoting their authors.
Yeah, but Ted is through Llewellyn. And of course you can look online. But if you're not a big name pagan, which I don't really consider myself to be, there's usually a bunch of names that show up before yours does. I'm sort of hoping that a book called The Little Book of Cat Magic will sort of sell itself. What? I've got a cat. You were asking if anybody talked. I've got somebody in the other room who's suddenly talking. I don't know what they're talking about. But I worry. So, like, oh God, maybe you should have bookstores have other copies of the same book in the animal section.
If it were up to me, they'd have a copy of my book in every section.
There you go.
Well, they could put it in with the romance because I love my cats. They could put it in with mysteries because cats are a mystery. They could put it in with science and nature. Yeah, we could definitely put this cat in every section except maybe like the Christian section. I don't know that it would fit all that well there.
You're aware that the word cat is nowhere in the Christian Bible, right?
I was not aware of that. Is that true?
That is true. If you look up get a Bible concordance and look up the word cat, it ain't there.
That's so weird.
Yeah.
I wonder why that is. Do you know why that is?
I didn't write the Bible.
Are you sure? Because I thought I saw your name on the front page.
Oh, there you go. That was
now the closest to magic any of my cats have done was my second cat, who's the only one that I deliberately didn't name after a goddess. Her name was Mickey because she looked like the gray tiger striped cat that my parents had when they first got married. So we said, it's a Mickey cat. You got to call her Mickey. But she had, like you said, both my cats had collars. The cats we have now, they're all naked. But Bass had a collar and Mickey had a collar, and they were both indoor cats. But Mickey was not thrilled with having a collar, whereas Bass was like, as long as I'm sleeping in your arms, I'm fine. With Mickey was saying, hey, I used to be an outdoor cat. I used to be a semi-feral cat. I don't like this thing on my neck. So every so often, she would manage to get it off. And if she managed to get it off in one piece, you just put it back on. She's like, fine, another month or two it'd be off again. But every so often she would pop the little elastic thing and completely wreck it. And I'd have to go to the shelter where I worked anywhere and just grab another one and put the tag on it and put it back on her. So one day the collar comes off and I look everywhere and I can't find it. I'm like, oh, where did she hide it this time? You know, because sometimes she'd hide it behind a sofa or something. And we were about to move, and I said, well, keep an eye out for Mickey's collar, because we don't know, you know, obviously she's got a new one, but I don't know where she hid it. I'm very curious as to where she hid it this time. We cleared that entire house, and my parents were the type that, like, cleaned every corner when moving to make sure it was a clean house. That collar did not turn up, and she did not go outside. And I'm thinking, all right, where did she pass into another dimension to say, now they'll never find it, and then come back in, you know?
That's what, and you never found it?
Never. It just did not. And the thing is I always said, you know, if you see Mickey's collar, let me know. It's not like you just pick it up and toss it in the trash. So, you know, I was like, no, we never saw it. I'm like,
well, you know, I have
interdimensional
cats make things appear and disappear in a truly, truly impressive way.
Oh, yeah.
And not just my food.
Now, a lot of people has cats that they let outside, and then the cat will come back in. Ours never goes outside. Ours always stays in the house. But
yeah, mine too.
If somebody did that and a cat got lost, do you have a spell also for them to help find a lost cat?
Yeah, well, you know, when I sat down to write the book, you know, and obviously, you know, there's a lot of cat things, but I thought, well, what are the things over the many years that I have had cats that I would want a cat spell for? And so, you know, that was one of the things when I had cats that went outside, I did have ones that went missing, some of whom came back and some of whom did not. And so I thought, well, okay, that's something I want to include. And the spell components for that, if you're going to use them, is if you've got a cat who's lost, a picture of the cat, if you have one, a bit of the cat's fur. If you don't have something specific, you can find some in a brush, or even on the floor or on the furniture. You know, I mean, my furniture is always covered with cat fur. Cut a piece of paper into the shape of a heart, or if you have like a heart-shaped stone, you could use that. A pen and a white candle. Optional if you want a picture or a statue of Bast, because as a mother cat goddess, she would be good at helping to find a lost kitten, whether it's full-grown or not. And place all the supplies on an altar or table, light the white candle on the piece of paper, draw a picture of a house. I mean, it can be pretty stick drawing. It doesn't have to be anything fancy. You don't have to worry about being an artist. With a figure next to it to represent you, and then write the cat's name inside the house. Then you place the picture and the fur, picture or whatever it is you're using to represent the cat on top of that paper where the cat's name is inside the house, and say the spell, which is very simple. When you light the candle, you say, "Let this light guide," put the cat's name in there, "back to me. Let them hear my heart's call and return home. Safe and sound, sound and safe. Vast goddess of cats, watch over mine and send them back to me soon. Let this light guide the cat back to me now, so mote it be." And then leave the candle burning in a fire-safe candle until you need to put it out. And repeat it every day until the cat comes home, or until it becomes clear that he or she probably won't. And hopefully that will help, that energy will help guide the cat home, or perhaps guide you to the cat while you are out searching.
Now, cats, they sense a lot of stuff. We have a fairly good size room outside of our bedroom upstairs, where we have it like a little reading room kind of. And
Ooh, always a good thing.
yeah, well, both of them will be on the bed sometimes, and our door's always open in the bedroom. But they'll be laying there sleeping on the bed, and all of a sudden they'll sit up and look out into that middle room like they're seeing something. And we already found out that their hearing is very good. So they sense things and see things. What do you think a cat sees?
Well, sometimes it's something mundane, like a mouse in the wall. I've had that happen. I'll walk into the kitchen sometimes and find all three kittens staring at either the stove or the wall in there somewhere, which probably means there is a mouse back there somewhere. However, I've also seen cats just stare at a wall, and I'm pretty sure there's or at the air. You've seen that, I'm sure, where a cat's staring at something incredibly intently. And, what I believe is that they're sensing some kind of a spirit, not necessarily a ghost kind of spirit. It could be an elemental, it could be anything. But yeah, they're clearly very sensitive, and as you say, their hearing is extremely good. But I think they sometimes sense things that we do not. I mentioned that I have had cats that help me with the energy healing work I do. I do what I call intuitive energy healing. It's a variant on like Reiki, that kind of thing. But it just came to me as a gift as opposed to something that you learn. And Magic was really good at this, but I've had other cats who do it too. They would jump up on the person I was working on, who was lying on, like a massage table, and they would sit on exactly the spot where the main problem was. How they knew where that spot was, I do not know, but they certainly knew. And they would sit there, and the person could usually feel the spot get warmer or energy moving, and then eventually the cat would move to another spot or get down from the table. But it's sort of remarkable to me that they somehow are sensing something, and I think are attracted to the energy of the healing itself. The first person who ever did Reiki on me had a cat who did that every single time. Got up, as soon as you started doing the work, they were attracted to the energy, got up on the table, and sat on top of you. And she apologized and said, "Do you mind?" And I said, "Are you kidding? Anytime a cat lies on me, I'm happy. And if they can help with the healing, that's even better." But yeah, I think they definitely sense things. I had a cat when I was a teenager. Teenage years are rough, and my bedroom was on the second floor of our house, and there was a pine tree outside my window, and I had this cat who was my best friend, and she would be outside roaming around doing her cat thing, and I would be all upset about something that happened at school or something mean that somebody said to me. Nobody liked me back then. Shocking, I know. And I would be up in my room crying, and she would literally climb that pine tree, sit outside my window, whack her paw against the window until I opened it up, and then come in and comfort me. How she knew from wherever she was that I was upset, I don't know. She just did.
Well, I know sometimes we have heard things in this house. Not that there's anything bad or anything like that spirit-wise. But I was here in my computer room one night, and I was here on the computer. I wasn't doing the show. And we have a bathroom right outside the door here across from my computer room. And I heard, sounded like my wife said, "There you are, little girl," which we keep a little water bowl in a spare bedroom there, bathroom. And I clearly heard her say that. There you are, little girl, and that's what we call our little female cat. And she took, I went out, opened the door up, and there wasn't nobody there. And I went downstairs, and I asked her, I said, what'd you want? And she says, what do you mean? I said, well, I just heard you upstairs. And she said, no, I've been down here cooking or doing something there in the kitchen. Because I haven't been upstairs. And so we know that there's things around like that. And I think a lot of times it's our cats, when they see things, they'll sit there and ears all be perked up, looking out into the middle room and everything. But I never see anything. So they sense things. I know they do.
Yeah, they definitely do. I think they're way more in touch with things than we are.
I have another little odd story about cats recognizing their names. My brother had a girlfriend who had a little, very young kitten who had just old enough to start, cognizing what people were saying to it. And it was a tuxedo cat. So it had little black splotches on the white face and all. And she couldn't figure out what to name the cat. And my brother jokingly says, oh, his name is Pitface. And she's like, what? He says, oh, it's Pitface. So she would bring the kitten over to our place, and my mother was aghast. She says, you can't name a cat Pitface. You've got to name it Pixie or something. But by that time, the cat knew its name was Pitface. And when the family all went up to Boston for the weekend, and I was home alone with our dog lady, who we trained to be fine with cats. And this is before we got a cat. And Pitface would sleep on my chest while I was watching TV. And this was so far back in the 1980s. They didn't have remotes yet. You had to physically get up and change channel. So I would get up, and she would scurry off. And after a while, she'd come back and sleep on my chest while I'd watch another hour programming, whatever. And every so often, she'd go into the main living room where the lights were out. And occasionally, she would kind of try and sharpen her claws on the cloth furniture. And I could hear the rip, rip, rip. And all I had to say is, Pitface, and you hear, tuk, 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 tuk. And she would run away. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't realize you could hear that.
Yes, they are remarkable. And I feel very fortunate to have them in my life. I've had cats since I was a little kid. The only time in my entire life when I did not have a cat was the couple of years when I was in college and living in dorm rooms and couldn't have one. And literally as soon as I could possibly move out into an apartment, I did, in part because I hated the dorms, and in part so I could have a cat, because it was just, unnatural for me not to have a cat. I mean, I like dogs too, don't get me wrong. I think dogs are lovely. But yeah, I'm definitely a crazy cat lady.
Yeah, I
have
grew
a
up with
question
dogs.
from the chat room, wanting to know about cat visitations after they pass on, and if you had experiences along those lines.
I have a couple of interesting stories about dead cats. The first one is my cat Samhain, the one who was black and orange. I'd gotten her from the shelter, and she was this tiny little thing, and she was one of the ones that Big Mystic used to go after. So she and Angus would hang out in the room upstairs, the cat room, as we called it, otherwise known as the guest bedroom. And then she would come down and be out, when I was out and about. But she was very affectionate and very sweet and stubborn. And she had chronic renal failure, and we fought it for 6 years. I mean, it was amazing that she made it that long. She got it when she was very young, so she was otherwise healthy. But we did sub-Q fluids at home and all of this stuff. And she finally passed, probably had a stroke, but she was right at the very end. And I brought her into the vet the next morning, my wonderful vet who, had fought with me to keep this cat alive. And my best friend met me there. And up until that point, I've always had my cats cremated, but I would send them out in mass ashes. I didn't keep the ashes and get them back because it didn't, they weren't there. Excuse me, tickle. And I was filling out the paperwork for Samhain, and I went to check the little box that said, send them out in the mass cremation. And I could not make my hand check the box. Sorry. And it was the wildest thing. I finally moved my hand over the box that said, get the cat's ashes back. That one I could check, no problem. And in fact, I didn't feel right until I got the box of ashes back home. And I truly believe she wanted to come home. I'd never had a cat who did that before. And yet, she was not going to let me check that other box. She was very clear about what she wanted. And as soon as I brought the box home and put it on my altar, things got very quiet. I could sort of sense her there, but not in a very strong way. She was home, and that was what she wanted. She wanted to be home with me. And so, that was that. Now, when Magic and Mystic died earlier this year, I lost them both in January, 8 days apart, which was hell on earth. And they both had cancer. Mystic had cancer since the March before, and we had this really long struggle to keep him alive. And he was a trooper. And Magic had gotten a different kind of cancer. I think she was diagnosed in October, and it was pretty much every day there was a chance I was going to come home and find her dead. It was horrible. But after I lost them, I lost her on the 3rd of January and him, 8 days later, literally the day after their 16th birthday. I could feel her presence especially so strongly that, like I said, she used to sit behind me on the couch and supervise my writing. And I would be sitting at the laptop, and without even thinking about it, I would reach back to pet her because I could so strongly feel her there. And they both slept with me. Magic used to sleep by my head, and Mystic would sleep by my feet. And I would go to bed at night, and I could feel them there. And it's been, obviously a number of months, and it's not as strong, but I definitely sense them both here. And that is not something that has happened with other cats. It was really particular to these cats. So it doesn't happen all the time. I've had cats I was really, really close to who I thought for sure would come back around and didn't. So don't think that if you don't get a visitation from your cat, it means they don't love you. I adored my grandmother, and she adored me. She never showed up, that woman. So sometimes they're just ready to be done. I think Magic and Mystic knew that I was just missing them terribly. And it's distinctly possible that Magic felt I still needed supervision. And she wanted to make sure that I was, doing things correctly with the new cats and all the rest of it. I don't expect they will stay around forever, but I do find it a great comfort.
Now, do you think that they reincarnate back?
Oh, I do. Absolutely. I have always hoped that the cats that I've loved the most would come back to me. I've never had a sense that one of mine did. I know other people who have had that happen where it was pretty clear in some pretty spooky ways that it was their old cat back again. My grandmother might come back as a cat. I don't know. But yeah, I do believe that they have at least 9 lives. I mean, I also believe people reincarnate. So, that's sort of part of my general belief system. But yeah, I think no energy is lost. you lose that particular animal or person at that time in that form in this particular lifetime. And maybe with cats, because they go through lifetimes more quickly, you might end up with one that comes back, if not in this lifetime, perhaps in another. And I do find that as a consolation as well.
And you've also got the Rainbow Bridge.
Yes, I think here's my theory for my great philosophical theory, backed up in fact by some of my experiences under hypnotherapy, which is a whole nother show topic. But I think that when we pass, some part of us may stay hanging around here for a little while, like magic and mystic are. In general, I think what happens is you move on, you go to a place where you rest and regroup, and that can be, some people see that as the lands beyond. It's the summer lands, whatever you want to call it. In hypnotherapy, my experience of it has actually been just sort of this very gray, quiet, restful place. I'm sort of hoping that on some level I'm dancing around in the Summerlands having parties. And then whenever you're ready, or whenever it is your time, you come back around. And for people, I think you get a chance to learn the lessons you didn't master in this lifetime or the lifetime before that. I think for cats, you just get to be a cat.
Our time, unfortunately, is just flew right on by, but as I can figure out that you've probably done talked enough.
What?
Yeah, she's losing her voice.
Yeah.
But
well, that's mostly just sinus stuff and pollen and crap. But at least no smoke.
Well, that's good. But our time is running right on by. And what I want you to do is give out your website and where people can get your books and all the good stuff if they want to follow you. And then we want you to stay on till we're off. We'll talk with you for a second or two.
Okay. Well, this particular book is called The Little Book of Cat Magic, Spells, Charms, and Tales. It's from Llewellyn, as all my witchy books are, all 11 of them, and a tarot deck called the Everyday Witch Tarot. My website is DeborahBlakeAuthor.com. Couldn't be much simpler. I have a blog, which is Deborah Blake at blogspot.com. If you go to my website, you can find links to my Facebook and Twitter. I'm on all those lovely things, Instagram. I'm just, I'm so boring. I'm Deborah Blake on Twitter. I'm Deborah Blake on Facebook. You can find me. And I answer all messages and emails. So, if people think of questions later on that they wanted to ask me, feel free. And if you follow my blog, I'm always doing giveaways and fun things with my books. I hope that people will come by and say hello and tell me that they heard me here.
All right. And with that, I guess...
and the books are available everywhere because they're from Llewellyn. Amazon, Barnes & Nobles. If you have a local indie bookstore, by all means, go request them from there. If they don't have it in stock, they can order it. So, go find my books.
It's a very good book. You need to get it, too. With that, Jeff?
Yes. Official website is theparanormalview.com. You can go to the Facebook / The Paranormal View. That's our on Facebook stuff. We put all kinds of links to interesting articles as well as links to the show podcast if you missed it during live. And you can follow me on Instagram and Twitter at Real Badger. I'm on Facebook, and there you go.
All right. We will see you next week at the same time. This is Henry Foister.
Jeffrey Gould.
And Barbara Duncan.
So good night, everybody. Have a great rest of the weekend. You've been listening to the Paranormal View on the ParaX Radio Network. Join us again next week at the same time for more of the Paranormal